The capsule in the woods. It was a quiet night in the small town of Millfield. The stars were shining, and the wind was cold. David, a 35-year-old mechanic, was drinking coffee outside his small house. He lived alone. No family. No friends nearby. Just him and his tools. Then, suddenly, boom! A loud sound came from the forest behind his house. The ground shook a little. Birds flew out of the trees. David stood up, surprised. It didn't sound like thunder. It was something else. Something strange. He grabbed his flashlight and put on his jacket. Curiosity pulled him toward the forest. As he walked through the dark trees, the sound of crickets and the smell of leaves filled the air. The forest was thick, but David knew this place well. He had grown up here. After about 10 minutes of walking, he saw a strange light blue and flickering between the trees. As he moved closer, he saw something he could not believe. There was a capsule. A shiny round object, half buried in the dirt. It was about the size of a small car. Metal, but not like any metal he had seen before. Smooth and glowing softly. David whispered, "What is this?" He walked around it slowly. The ground around the capsule was burned, like something very hot had landed here. Steam was rising. The air smelled like metal and smoke. He touched the side. It was warm, but not too hot. There was a small window on the top. He stood on a rock and looked inside. His eyes widened. Inside the capsule was a child. It was not a normal child. Its skin was light gray. Its hair was white and soft. And its eyes were glowing blue, not just reflecting light, but glowing from inside. The child was breathing, asleep, but alive. David stepped back. His heart was beating fast. "This isn't human," he said softly. "What is this thing?" But something in the child's face stopped him from running. It looked peaceful, not dangerous. In fact, it looked weak, small, like it needed help. Suddenly, the child's eyes opened. It looked straight at David. David froze. The child didn't speak, but its eyes showed emotion, fear, confusion, and something else. Hope. David whispered, "Can you hear me?" The child blinked slowly. Then it touched the glass with its small hand. David looked around. No one else was here. No one knew about this. And then, he made a choice. He pulled out his wrench and began to open the capsule. The metal was tough, but David was strong and careful. After a few minutes, the hatch slowly lifted open with a soft hiss. Warm air came out. The child sat up slowly. It didn't cry. It didn't scream. It just looked at him. David held out his hand. The child tilted its head like it didn't understand. Then, it slowly reached out and touched David's hand. In that moment, something strange happened. David felt a small shock, like static, but deeper. A wave of images flashed in his mind. Stars, a giant ship, a planet with blue grass, people running, a war, a fall. Then silence. The child pulled back its hand. It looked tired. Its head dropped. David quickly picked it up. It was warm and light, like a human child. He whispered, Okay, I got you." He wrapped it in his jacket and carried it back through the forest. Back at his house, David placed the child gently on the couch. He gave it water. The child didn't drink, but touched the glass like it was trying to learn. It looked at everything with curious eyes. David sat on a chair, staring. "What have I done?" He whispered. "Who are you? Where did you come from?" The child looked at him and smiled. David didn't smile back. He was still scared, but something inside him said, "This child needs you." Suddenly, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Did you see something fall tonight? Please reply." David felt a chill. He looked at the child again. The child's eyes glowed a little brighter. He turned off the phone and locked the doors. The alien child, it didn't speak. It didn't cry. But it was watching everything. Like it understood. David sat across from the strange child in his living room. The early morning light came through the window, but the night's question still hung heavy in the air. The child alien, for sure, was silent. Wrapped in David's old jacket, it sat with wide glowing eyes, staring at the ceiling fan, then the lights, then at David himself. David had been up all night. His thoughts spun like a storm. Where did it come from? Is someone looking for it? Should I call the police? The army? NASA? But his gut said, no, don't tell anyone, not yet. The child touched a spoon on the table. The spoon bent without pressure. David stared. Did you do that? He whispered. The child looked at him. Calm, innocent, but those eyes, they held secrets. Deep ones. David stood up and paced the room. This is insane, he muttered. I fix cars, not deal with aliens. He turned back. The child was now mimicking him, pacing slowly across the floor, trying to copy his steps. It tripped on a rug and fell, but didn't cry. Instead, it laughed, a soft, strange sound, like music underwater. David paused. He felt something shift. In his heart. It wasn't just a creature. It was a kid, lost, alone. Suddenly the lights in the room flickered, then again. Then they went out completely. David looked around. Great, power's out. The child walked to the wall and placed its hand on the light switch. The light bulb above them flickered once, and then turned back on. David's mouth dropped open. You fixed it? The child smiled again. No words, just understanding. David slowly crouched down. You're not here by accident, are you? The child tilted its head. David continued. You're hiding from something, or someone. Just then, there was a knock on the door. 3 slow knocks. David froze. He walked to the door and peeked. Through the side curtain, 2 men in black suits stood outside, sunglasses, earpieces, serious faces. One of them looked directly at the curtain, like he knew David was watching. Mr. David Carter. One said loudly, we're looking into a meteor event that occurred last night. David's heart raced. Meteor? That was no meteor. He didn't open the door. We believe something may have landed nearby, the second man said. Unusual lights, sounds. Anything strange? David said nothing. Behind him, the child touched his leg gently. David looked down. The child raised a finger to its lips, a clear sign. Don't speak. Don't trust them. David's fingers tightened on the doorknob. He called out. Didn't see anything. Just heard thunder. Silence. Then the man replied, if you remember anything, call this number. He slid a card under the door. Footsteps. Silence again. David waited a full minute before picking up the card. No name. Just a phone number and one word, division. Later that day, David drove into town to buy supplies, blankets, food, batteries. He brought the child with him, hiding it in the back of his van under a blanket. As they passed a gas station, the child pressed its hand against the van window. It stared at people, smiled at a dog, watched kids playing outside. It wasn't afraid anymore. It was curious. Like it was seeing Earth for the first time. David whispered to himself, what do I do with you? The child looked at him, and without speaking, David heard a voice in his mind, a soft voice. Not clear words, just feelings. Safe, stay, danger coming. David slammed the brakes, shocked. The child looked calm. David looked ahead, breathing hard. Okay, I believe you, he said. That night, David made a bed for the child in the attic. He covered the windows and kept the lights low. The child curled up like any normal kid might. Before leaving the room, David looked back one last time. The child was holding a photo, one of David as a child with his parents. It pointed at the photo, then pointed at David. Yes, David whispered. That's me. The child smiled again, and for the first time, softly said something. A single word. Home. David stood still. Goosebumps covered his skin. Whatever. This child was whatever danger was coming. It had chosen him as its protector, and something told him. This was just the beginning. Signals from the sky. The child didn't dream like humans. It remembered everything. Even the things it was never supposed to. Midnight. David woke up to the sound of humming, not from outside. Not from machines. It was coming from above, from the attic. He grabbed the flashlight and climbed the stairs, his heart beating faster with each step. The door creaked as he pushed it open, and then he saw it. The child standing in the middle of the room, glowing softly, blue light pulsing from its skin. Around it, tiny objects floated in the air, screws, nails, pencils, even a flashlight. David froze. "What are you doing?" he whispered. The child didn't answer. Its eyes were closed. It was focused, like it was listening to something far away. Suddenly, the objects dropped. The child opened its eyes, calm, as if nothing had happened. David stepped forward. "Are you okay?" The child looked up and pointed at the sky. The next morning, David took the child outside. It was risky, but they needed fresh air. They walked far into the woods where no one could see them. The child looked up at the sky constantly. It wasn't looking at the sun or clouds. It was looking beyond. Suddenly, it stopped. It pressed both hands on the ground and closed its eyes. The soil beneath its fingers lit up with faint symbols, glowing lines, circles, patterns David had never seen. "What is this?" he asked, kneeling. The child opened its eyes and looked at him. Then it pointed to David's chest and tapped twice. David frowned. "Me?" The child nodded. Then it made a sound, strange, soft, almost like a melody. Suddenly, David's radio in the backpack turned on by itself, but there was no music. Static, beeping, and a voice. Location: compromised. Subject: alive, find the child. David's heart dropped. He turned off the radio fast, eyes wide. "They're listening?" The child nodded slowly. David felt a chill. "They're coming for you, aren't they?" The child didn't answer, but it didn't need to. That night, David stayed up, staring at the sky from his porch. The stars looked different. He picked up a telescope he hadn't used in years. As he looked through it, something caught his eye. Movement. Not a plane, not a bird, not a satellite. It moved too fast, then stopped, then moved again. In a straight line, then it vanished. David stepped back from the telescope. That wasn't normal. Suddenly, his phone buzzed. Message from unknown. "Do not protect it. You don't know what it really is." David turned the phone off and crushed it with a hammer. Later that night, the child stood at the window. The stars reflected in its glowing eyes. It whispered something David didn't understand. A word? A name? A place? Then it raised its hand, and a single spark of blue light shot into the sky like a silent flare. David saw it. "What did you just do?" The child turned and whispered just one word. "Home," but far above Earth. Something saw the signal, and something began to move. David woke up gasping for air. His head hurt, his chest felt heavy, and his room was glowing blue. He sat up quickly. The child stood at the foot of his bed, eyes closed, hand resting lightly on David's forehead. A faint light connected them, like a string made of energy. "What are you doing?" David asked, breathless. Child opened its eyes slowly, and David saw everything. He wasn't in his room anymore. He was floating high above a planet, but it wasn't Earth. Or at least not the Earth he knew. It was the same shape, the same oceans. But the sky was darker, the colors sharper. Strange. Towers stood tall across the land, glowing with light. David floated through one of the towers. Inside, tall beings spoke in soft, echoing voices. They looked like the child, but older, wiser, dressed in long white robes. In the center of the room was a map. A hologram. It showed the Earth, but next to it was another Earth, smaller, broken, David felt fear like it wasn't his own, but someone else's, someone watching this from long ago. Then he heard a voice not with ears, but inside his head. We gave your planet its second chance, but it is not your world. It was never truly yours. The vision changed. He now saw humans, early ones, learning, building, fighting, and then falling. Towers crumbled. The skies turned red. Something dark had arrived. Something terrible. Then silence. The world reset. And Earth became what it is today. David gasped and fell backward. The vision ended. The child looked at him with calm eyes. You showed me the past, David whispered. The child nodded. David stared at the wall, breathing hard. Earth was changed long ago. And you, your people, saved it? The child pointed to itself, then to David. Together? David guessed. The child nodded again, then touched David's chest over his heart. Protector. Later that day, David sat outside, staring at the sky again. Why me? He whispered. The child was playing quietly nearby, drawing symbols in the dirt with a stick. David looked over. One of the symbols matched what he saw in the vision. A circle inside a triangle, glowing faintly. Is that your people's symbol? He asked. The child nodded. David leaned closer. What do they want now? Why send you here? The child paused, and for the first time spoke clearly. A small, soft voice. To fix what we broke. That night, thunder rolled in, but it wasn't rained out in the sky. Clouds glowed with something inside them. Metal, lights, movement. David grabbed his binoculars. His hands shook. He saw it clearly. A ship. Not human. Hovering above the clouds. Hidden from the world. Watching. Waiting. Inside. The child sat quietly, drawing on the wooden floor with glowing fingers. It had drawn earth, and around it circles. Layers, shields, or cages. David felt the meaning without words. Earth is not free. It never was, and they are coming back to keep it that way. The morning was too quiet. No birds, no wind, no sound at all. David stepped outside, coffee in hand, and stopped. The air felt wrong, heavy, like something was pressing down on the world. He looked up. A strange cloud hung above the town. Not moving, not natural. It glowed faintly. Metallic. David whispered, They're here. 10 minutes later, a black car pulled up outside his home. Same model, same color. Same two men in black suits from before. But this time, they didn't smile. They didn't pretend. One of them stepped forward. Mr. Carter, we need to talk. Now. David blocked the door. I told you. I haven't seen anything. The man took off his sunglasses slowly. His eyes were pitch black. No pupils, no white, just dark. And then he smiled. But it wasn't a human smile. It was too wide. Too perfect. David stepped back. What are you? The second man answered, voice flat. We were the first. Suddenly, the windows behind David shattered from inside the house. He turned just in time to see the child standing at the top of the stairs, eyes glowing brighter than ever. The floor around it, vibrated. The men outside stepped forward, but the child raised one hand. A pulse of energy blasted outward, silent, invisible, powerful. The ground cracked. Trees bent. The black car burst into flames without a sound. The two men didn't even flinch. Their forms began to change. Their skin shimmered, cracked, and peeled away like old paint. Underneath were tall, thin beings made of something not quite flesh. Smooth, metallic, eyes like glass. David couldn't breathe. They weren't visitors. They were controllers. And they had always been here. The child ran to David, grabbing his hand. David felt that familiar spark. The same connection. This time, the message was stronger. Run. They escaped through the backwoods, hiding between thick trees and rocks. But The sky above was not safe. Machines flew silently, scanning the land with red beams. David and the child reached an old cabin deep in the forest. David used to fix tools here. Now it was the only place left. Inside, he locked the door and fell to the floor, breathing hard. He looked at the child. "You fought them. What are they?" The child paused, then spoke softly. "They are the Watchers. They were sent to protect Earth, but they lied. They never left. They erased the truth and called it peace." David sat in silence. Everything he believed about history, about the world, was falling apart. The child moved to the center of the cabin and raised its hand. A small hologram appeared above its palm. It showed Earth surrounded by rings, invisible walls. They blocked your mind, your memories, your power, the child whispered. David looked at his own hands. "Me? I have no power." The child walked forward and touched his forehead. This time, the light didn't just show the past. It unlocked something inside him. A wave of heat passed through his chest. His fingers tingled. His thoughts became sharper, faster, clearer. David stood up. He wasn't just protecting the child anymore. The child was awakening him. Outside, the machines were getting closer, but David's fear was gone. He looked at the child. "Let them come." David screamed. Not from fear, from power. His body burned, not like fire, but like every nerve was waking up at once. The child stood in front of him, hands still on his forehead. Calm, focused, patient. Energy flowed between them like invisible lightning. David fell to his knees, fists tight against the ground. The wooden floor cracked under his hands, and then silence. The pain stopped. David opened his eyes, and for the first time in his life, he saw everything differently. The wind outside, he could hear it moving through each tree. The walls of the cabin, he could sense every nail, every screw inside them. And the child, he could feel its heartbeat, fast, steady, full of light. David stood up slowly, breathing hard. "What did you do to me?" The child smiled gently. "You were not made weak," it said in its soft voice. "You were made asleep." David looked at his hands. Nothing seemed different, but everything felt different. "I'm not one of you," he said. "No," the child replied. "You're something they fear more. You are human, with memory restored." Outside, the ground trembled. A sharp hum filled the air. Then came the machines, floating black drones with red glowing eyes. They swarmed over the treetops, scanning everything. Moving like a pack of wolves, they found the cabin. One of them fired a warning shot, burning a hole through the metal shed out front. David stepped out, unarmed. The child tried to stop him, but David raised a hand. "I'm done hiding." The drone charged its weapon. David didn't move. The blast fired, but it never hit him. The energy stopped mid-air, frozen, like time had paused. David blinked. His hand was glowing faintly. The energy pulse hovered inches from his chest. Then, with a flick of his wrist, he sent it flying back. The drone exploded. The others screamed in machine language and attacked. David moved like lightning. No training, no armor, just instinct. One by one, he took them down, redirecting their shots, pulling their circuits apart without touching them, using only will and memory. Not memory of war. Memory of what humans used to be when it was over. The forest was silent again. The child stood beside him. David was covered in ash, eyes burning with fire, but his voice was calm. "They wanted us broken, kept in cages." He looked up at the sky, but we were never meant to stay down. That night, David sat by the fire. The child was drawing again, only this time. It handed the picture to him. It showed David not as he was now, but as something more. Taller, armored in light, protecting a city of both humans and aliens. David stared at the drawing. "You see something I don't," he said. The child replied, "I don't see it, I remember it." Far above Earth, in the cold silence of space, the Watchers were watching. Of them whispered into the void, "The Protector has awakened. Initiate Phase 2. Begin Earth lockdown." High above Earth, they came, not ships, not visitors, but gates, ripping open across the sky like deep wounds in space. From each one, dark shapes poured out, machines, weapons, Watchers, thousands of them, descending like a storm, quiet and deadly. Weren't here to negotiate. They were here to erase. Down below, David stood on the rooftop of an old power plant. Winds howled. Lights flickered. The child stood beside him, smaller than ever, but glowing brighter than the stars above. "They're not hiding anymore," David said. "No," the child replied. "Because they think it's too late." David clenched his fists. "Then they forgot what humans do when we have nothing left." The child looked up at him. "We rise." The first wave came, fast hunter drones slicing through the sky like razors. David didn't run. He leapt into the air without machines, without wings, and met them head on. His hands, now charged with energy he didn't fully understand, tore through metal like paper. Each move, each strike, was guided not by training, but by memory. Not just his, but human memory. Old memory, hidden inside every cell. Down below, others were awakening too. Around the world, ordinary people, construction workers, farmers, students felt a shift. Dreams they had long forgotten now made sense. Symbols, songs, strength. Child's signal had reached them. Humanity was not alone. Humanity was remembering, but the Watchers weren't finished. Their mothership, 10 times the size of a city, emerged from the largest gate that had hovered above Earth, like a god looking down at an ant. And then it spoke, across all channels, all screens, all minds. "You were given your chance. You chose chaos. Now you will return to silence." David floated in front of it, the child by his side. "No," he said. His voice echoed across the earth. "You silenced us. Now it's our turn to speak." He reached out and the child placed its hand in his. In that moment, their energies combined. The sky lit up not with fire, but with truth. Every hidden memory, every locked part of the human code, every strength we had forgotten returned. The battle lasted minutes, but it felt eternal. The sky turned into fire, the ground into lightning, the air into history. David, now burning like a living star, broke through the mothership's core with a final burst of light. The Watchers screamed. And then silence. Real silence, the kind that comes after a storm. When it was over, the child lay unconscious in David's arms. He looked down at it, eyes full of tears. "You're safe now," he whispered. "We're all safe now." The gates closed. The sky cleared. And for the first time in thousands of years, Earth belonged to its people again. Epilogue. 1 year later, a new city stood where the old one had burned. Humans and visitors walked side by side. The stars were no longer quiet. They were listening. Watching. Waiting. But Earth would never sleep again.